Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Talk with Antonio. This is Antonio speaking. Today is June 3rd, 2025. I just want to say to everybody, I hope you all had a great Memorial Day weekend and spend time with your family, girlfriend, wives, etc. I just want to say I hope you all had a great and safe Memorial Day weekend. Had, because it's already passed. And for this episode, before I start, I just want to say that I want to apologize that I have been putting off recording this episode, which I did. I'm not gonna lie, I did record it like 2 weeks before the month of May ended, but I wasn't really happy with it, and I deleted it, but I couldn't record again because life, I had to go back to, I've been working, and also I've been kind of like stressed out in terms of, I'm actually struggling, I'm not going to lie, in terms of work, because right now work with my job that I do with delivery driving, it's been kind of like I've been hitting kind of a wall, not a lot of orders are getting, I'll be frank, I don't know how it is with other, with Amazon Flex or Amazon, but with the one that I do, some trips are not worth taking, So, I'll be frank. I cherry pick. I mean, who doesn't, Who doesn't cherry pick? And I've been like, right now I've been looking for another job, and right now I just got an alert that I should, next Tuesday, I'm going to go and do it for an interview. And I can't say what it is now, but I will keep you posted what it is. So, getting back to the topic, for this episode, I will be talking about something that I have not talked about when it comes to religion, because you know how I feel about religion, and I've said this many times in the past. I'm not religious at all. I am not an atheist, but like I said, I am I fall into the category of I don't know. Basically, that's what it is. I'm not saying yes, but I'm not saying no. It's just I don't know. And then this person I want to talk about today is Pope Francis. I don't have anything against the guy because, like I said in the past, but here's some food for thought for you people. Growing up, my mom and dad, we were Jehovah's Witness once upon a time. It's a very, very, I will talk about that in later episodes for future episodes. I'm sorry. Growing up in that religion, I remember I was taught that any other type of religion was not acceptable. It was not they're Jehovah's Witnesses claim to be very inclusive when in reality they are the least inclusive people. They're very fucking prejudiced. They are so they're just basically a toxic religion, And growing up, I do remember I don't know if I still have that book somewhere in the garage or something like that. And they used to say that the United Nations was Babylon or something. And it was the harlot, and they used to show all these other religious figures. But in one in particular, they always used to put their main focus on Pope, on the Catholic Pope, especially at that time, it was Pope John Paul II. I knew about him very little, but in that religion, they used to say that guy was the quote-unquote Antichrist. I have my views now that I'm much older. I have my different views on Pope John Paul, and I was like, they used to say that he was the Antichrist, and I remember in the book they used to show he was giving blessings to the army, and basically just making it like he was not worthy, and I remember they used to say that he didn't really serve the true God, which was Jehovah, and I was like, give me a fucking break. And up until he passed away, then this other pope came in, Pope Benedict the 16th, I believe. But I never really saw him as a pope. And then in 2013, in March, they elected Pope Francis, who his original name was Jorge Mario Bergoglio. Was born in Argentina. And he is considered the first, let me see. He is considered the first, Jesuit pope, the first Latin American, the first born or raised outside of Europe since the 8th century Syrian Pope Gregory III. And you know what I've noticed from this guy, that he was also it says here that he was his previous posts were Provincial Superior of the Jesuits in Argentina from 1973 to 1979, Titular Bishop of Auca from 1992 to 1997, Auxiliary Bishop of Buenos Aires 1992 until 1997, Coadjutor Bishop of Buenos Aires 1997-1998, Archbishop of Buenos Aires from 1998 to 2013, Ordinary for the Faithful of the Easter Rites in Argentina from 1998 until 2013, Cardinal Priest of San Roberto Bellarmino from 2001 to 2013, President of the Argentine Episcopal Conference from 2005 to 2011. And it says here that he was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, to a family of Italian origin. Bergoglio was inspired to join the Jesuits in 1958 after recovering from a severe illness. He was an ordained Catholic priest in 1969, and from 1973 to 1979, he was the Jesuit Provincial Superior in Argentina. He became the Archbishop of Buenos Aires in 1998 and was created a cardinal in 2001 by the late Pope John Paul II. Following the resignation of Pope Benedict XVI, the 2013 Papal Conclave elected Bergoglio as Pope on March 13th. He chose Francis as his papal name in honor of Saint Francis of Assisi. And you know what I've noticed from this Pope right here? In general, I will say this. I actually respected the guy, even though I'm not religious at all. But the things that he did, and you know the one thing that really impressed me about this guy, I don't know about Pope Benedict, but I do remember Pope John Paul II. You know, this is the one thing I've always been like very critical of the Catholic Church. Pope John Paul II used to sit like in, everything was made out of gold, a gold cross. Everything was like all these luxuries that these people have. And yet somehow they made all these religious figures. Everything was made out of gold, but yet somehow they didn't have enough money to give up to a homeless people or to homeless children. That's where I have like kind of draw the line there. But with Pope Francis, once he came in, he got rid of all the fucking luxurious things, which is something that's very admirable. He lived a simple life. He didn't really have any luxuries. His cross that he had was made out of normal steel. He lived a very simple life. And you know, from what I've seen from when he was a young man living in Argentina, he was a janitor. And they show pictures of, I've seen on Instagram that he was, after getting out, leaving work, he was on a train going back to his house and living a normal life. You can tell that Pope Francis was a very humble guy. You could tell that he really was a humble guy. And you know, it's funny that what I respect about him is this. It says here that throughout his papacy, Francis was noted for his humility, emphasis on God's mercy, international visibility, commitment to interreligious dialogue, and concern for the poor, migrants, and refugees, something that very religious pastors in the United States of America don't have. And you know, I have a picture here in Instagram that really, really, really infuriated me. It says here this. They show Pope Francis, who I deeply respect. I'm sorry if I keep repeating the same thing. I just have this huge respect for this guy. They show on the left, they show Pope Francis, and on the right, they show the biggest piece of shit, fucking blood-sucking leech that I cannot stand, Joel Osteen. That right there, ladies and gentlemen, is a one guy that I just cannot stand that motherfucker. It says here, Pope Francis lived simply so others could simply live. Joel Osteen pays himself an annual salary of $54 million. From the profits of his megachurch. Has a 20-car garage built for his custom vehicles, including a 270,000 Ferrari 458 Italia, and lives in a 70,000 square foot mansion. Notice the difference. Know what I mean? That shows right there, and yet somehow Christians always fucking trashed Pope Francis. And I remember, probably everybody knows this quote unquote so-called senator from Georgia, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Jesus Christ, that lady, she claims to be a Christian. She always shows off. She's always quote unquote reading the Bible, when in reality she can't even act like a decent human being. Because you know what she said? And this is something that she says she said that, but she said she was referring to somebody else. When in reality, she was fucking lying through her teeth. This is what she said, and I quote: "Today, there were major shifts in global leaderships. Evil is being defeated by the hand of God." Unquote. It says here that, in summary, while Pope Francis himself is not a character in the official Magic the Gathering or lore sets, his name has been linked to the fan-made cards and the controversy surrounding Marjorie Taylor Greene's comments, where her initials MTG were used to refer to her. That's what it says here. But you know, it's funny how this lady who claims to be a Christian could say something of a guy who was more of a decent human being that she'll ever be. And she always fucking runs her mouth. It says here that Marjorie Taylor Greene says Catholic bishops are controlled by Satan, just like her. You know what? I'm not even gonna beat around the bush. She's not controlled by Satan. She's just a despicable human being, sucking the cock of Trump all the fucking time, spreading conspiracy theories. And I don't understand how. It's funny how she was always acting out when President Biden was in office, her and that other slut, Lauren Boebert, and yet Mike Johnson didn't shut her up. Shut those two bitches up. But yet when Representative Al Green said something to Trump, fucking Mike Johnson immediately quieted him down. They threw him out. But yet somehow he never shut up Marjorie Taylor Greene or Lauren Boebert. That's like, talk about double standard right there. And it says here, this is from April 30th. Georgia Republican Congressman Marjorie Taylor Greene fired back after a religious and civil rights call for her censure over an online post that followed the death of Pope Francis. And it says here that after, I'm not going to read what she fucking said. It says that after the post was made, the Catholic League for Religious and Civil Rights called for Greene's censure. The congresswoman then doubled down in a lengthy statement issued Wednesday demanding an apology over a letter Catholic League President William Donahue sent to the House Ethics Committee. Greene said that she stopped attending Mass when she became a mother after realizing she could, quote, she could not trust the church leadership to protect my children from pedophiles. Yeah, there's one in power right now who's in the White House. It says here, and I quote, "It's the church leadership I was referring to when I invoked the devil," unquote. She continues, "Just was clear, bishops, when I said controlled by Satan, I wasn't talking about the Catholic Church, I was talking about you." Greene did not mention Pope Francis by name in her response. However, the Pope is the Bishop of Rome. Greene's initial post drew ire from many, including Clarence Blaylock, a Democrat who was seeking to unseat Greene as a House District Representative in 2026 after falling short in the Democratic 2024 primary for her seat. You know, the Catholic Church has always been surrounded by controversy in regards to what the fuck she said about pedophiles and all this. I'm not going to get into that because this is not what this episode's about. I'm just talking about Pope Francis, of how this guy was a decent. You know, it's funny that even atheists respected the guy. I have a family member who was not a fan of him. He really trashed him all the time. But everyone has their things. And like I, for one, in terms of religious people, I don't have any respect for Joel Osteen. If you can compare Pope Francis to Joel Osteen, huge difference there, ladies and gentlemen. But in terms of Pope Francis, I will say that it sucks that he passed away. And the last time he was very sick prior, and it's funny how he was very inclusive. This is another thing that I really respected the guy. It says here that he was very against Trump, and then Trump must have hated the guy. And it says here that Francis believed that the Catholic Church should demonstrate more inclusivity to the LGBTQ people, and stated that although blessings of same-sex unions are not permitted, individuals in same-sex relationships can be blessed as long as the blessing is not given in a liturgical context. This is another thing that really made me respect the guy. Francis made women full members of Dictaseries in the Roman Curia. Francis convened on the synodality, which was described as a culmination of his papacy and the most important event in the Catholic Church since the Second Vatican Council. It says here also that Francis was known for having a less formal approach to the papacy than his predecessors. By, for instance, it says here, choosing to reside in the Domus Sanctae Martha, I can't pronounce that house, guest house, rather than in the papal apartments of the Apostolic Palace used by previous popes. In addition, due to both his Jesuit and Ignatian aesthetic, he was known for favoring simpler vestments, devoid of ornamentation, including refusing the traditional papal mozzetta cape upon his election, choosing silver instead of gold for his piscatory ring, and keeping the same pectoral cross he had as cardinal. That's what I'm saying. The guy was a very humble dude. He just kept it simple. Very, very simple. It also says here that concerning global governance, Francis was a critic of trickle-down economics. That's something that I totally agree with. Trickle-down economics is fucking bullshit. For example, here in the United States of America back in the 80s, Reaganomics, that's trickle-down economics. That's for another episode. It says here that consumerism and overdevelopment. He made action on climate change something that people here in the United States, especially by right-wing nuts, don't believe in. He viewed capital punishment as inadmissible in all cases and committed the Catholic Church to its worldwide abolition. It also says here that Francis criticized the rise of right-wing populism and anti-immigration politics. Oh man, if only Pope Francis was alive right now and see what's going on here, especially with all these raids of ICE that's going down in this fucking piece of shit right now. It says here, calling the protection of migrants a, quote, duty of civilization, unquote. Francis supported the decriminalization of homosexuality. In his international diplomacy, Francis helped to restore full diplomatic relations between Cuba and the United States, negotiated a deal with the People's Republic of China to define Communist Party influence in appointing Chinese bishops, and encouraged peace between Israel and Palestinians. That's another thing that I noticed, that he was very against what was going on, destroying like what was going on in Gaza right now, which is... no comment on that. Signed the Vatican's first treaty with the state of Palestine. In 2022, he apologized for the church's role in the cultural genocide of Canadian indigenous peoples in residential schools. From 2023, he condemned Israel's military operations in Gaza, calling for investigations of war crimes. Another thing that I totally agree with. Francis made his last public appearance on Easter Sunday before dying on April 21st, 2025. The Papal Conclave elected Leo XV as Francis' successor on May 8th. Leo became the second pope from the Americas after Francis. But now, because this guy got elected, I don't have any respect for that guy. I'm not even getting into the only thing I will say is that he says that he defines marriage between a man and woman. Typical homophobic religious nut. And then Trump claims that he was responsible for this guy to get elected. Trump wants to take credit for everything that happens in the world. He takes credit for anything that goes well, but if it's wrong, he likes to blame others. That's no wonder he gets called a taco. And it says here that in regards to Pope Francis, it says here that he was born Jorge Mario Bergoglio on December 17th, 1936 in Flores, a neighborhood of Buenos Aires. He was the eldest of the 5 children of Mario Jose Bergoglio and Regina Maria Sivori. Mario Bergoglio was an Italian immigrant and an accountant from Piedmont. Regina Sivori was a housewife born in Buenos Aires to a family of northern Italian origin. It says here that Mario Bergoglio's family left Italy in 1929 to escape the fascist rule of Benito Mussolini. No wonder he was a very he was against fascism. Look at this guy right here who was in power. He's another fascist pig. It says here that according to Maria Elena Bergoglio, the Pope's only living sibling, the family did not immigrate for economic reasons. His other siblings were Oscar, Adrian, Martha Regina, and Alberto Horacio. His niece, Cristina Bergoglio, is a painter based in Madrid, Spain. It says here that he was 21 when he was 21 years old. After a life-threatening pneumonia and 3 cysts, Bergoglio had part of his lung exercised. It says here that he worked, he had been a bouncer and as a janitor. Whoa, I can't imagine him being a bouncer. He must have fucking kicked ass, though. You know what they say? If someone messed with him as a bouncer. Nope. Wrong button. Sorry about that. And it shows here that he was training to be in early priesthood in the 1950s, and up until they show a lot of things here of Pope Francis. He became the Archbishop, and he had Argentine government relations, papacy, public image, his health. Oh man! But you can tell that on the last days that he was not well at all. He was in a wheelchair. I mean, he did not look well at all. But I noticed that over the years, he kind of a little bit pudgy, but it was, it's very obvious, But it's funny that in 2015 he came here to the United States of America to speak, and I remember the video where I think he was traveling here in the United States of America. He was all over. And then I remember the famous baby pope. This lady took her younger child to be dressed as the Pope. And there's a video. Look it up on YouTube, people. And it was showing how Pope Francis saw a little baby. And he was just laughing, and they stopped. And then they took the baby and they gave it to Pope Francis, and he gave her a blessing, which is, as a very kind gesture from the late Pope Francis. And then he finally came to the United States of America, to Washington, D.C. to speak. But you could tell that he was very tired of traveling a lot. And at that time, the Speaker of the House, John Boehner, he was already on his way out. But before he did that, he wanted to see Pope Francis in front. And you could tell John Boehner was very emotional seeing Pope Francis speaking. He was very you could look it up. He was very emotional. And right after Pope Francis did his famous speech here in Congress, John Boehner resigned from being Speaker of the House. And he finished his papacy here in Italy, or in Vatican City, I'm sorry. And the last time that they show a picture, it's funny how this guy, what's this fucker's name, the vice president, some JD Vance, that guy, he was the last guy to see Pope Francis alive, and you could tell that Pope Francis was not happy seeing that guy. And once he met with JD Vance, Pope Francis passed away. And I remember it was all over social media how they were putting the blame on JD Vance. Oh, he killed Pope Francis and this and that, yada yada yada. I don't know. Like, I'm no fan of JD Vance because I don't think I'll be frank. I'm not a fan of this administration in general. In previous episodes that I talked, you can hear how I express myself talking about this guy in power, basically just doing a lot of shit that I'm not a fan of, and especially this guy who acts like a complete jagoff. I can't stand it. And then a lot of people were saying, "Oh, JD Vance killed Pope Francis." Quite possibly. So, in conclusion, talking about Pope Francis, and then they elected Leo something. I really don't have any respect about that. I don't have any respect for this guy, none whatsoever. So, in conclusion, talking about Pope Francis, I would say he did a lot of good. He did what he could. He did what I would say he was a decent human being. I don't know if he did enough to do more in regards to. I'm not gonna say. I think people have an idea what I'm talking about. But I would say in terms of Pope Francis, I will say that I'll give him credit. I did respect the guy. He did what he could. Sadly, he didn't live much longer, and he passed away. A lot of people went to the funeral. Trump went in, Melania, President Biden, the First Lady Jill Biden went there, and all these other leaders in the world went to go to the funeral of Pope Francis. I don't think President Bill. Oh yeah, I think President Bill Clinton went there. I don't know. I don't remember. I could be wrong, perhaps. So what can I say about Pope Francis? I mean, he was a decent guy. I liked him a lot, but it's sad what happened to him later on. It's funny how as we get older, we all go through health problems and such. And it's like me, like right now, I'm having a lot of lower back pain. Is like even the pain is going down to my right leg, I believe. It sucks, And when they did my X-rays and my MRI on my lower back, because I had an accident last year around this date, they say that I have a bulging disc plus arthritis and minor scoliosis. It's shit like that and we all have health problems once we get older. And Pope Francis, had it says here that he was from health problems. Says that he was suffering from. Let me see. Health says that he was elected at the age of 76 to be the Pope. He was healthy. It says that the only concern that they had was he had a respiratory infection. He had chronic lung damage because of his pneumonia. He was prone to bouts of the influenza, bronchitis in the winter, knee problems, and sciatica, prompting him to frequently use a wheelchair, a walker, or a cane. It says that in 2021, the Pope's health problems prompted rumors that he might resign, which he dismissed. In June 2022, after going treatment for his knee, Francis canceled the planned trips to the Democratic Republic of the Congo and South Sudan. It says here that in 2023, he was hospitalized with a respiratory infection. He returned to celebrate the Easter Vigil Mass on Holy Saturday in April. He went in June, he went abdominal surgery after suffering from a hernia. He had mobility problems. But it says here that he had bronchitis in February 2025. And it says here it says that his last appearance was on St. Peter's Square in Vatican City on Easter Sunday on April 20th, 2025, where he gave his final Easter address and called for a ceasefire in Gaza. More power to you, Mr. Francis. He died at 7:35 local time on Easter Sunday on April 21st, 2025 at the age of 88 in his residence at Domus Sanctae Marthanae. His death was announced by Cardinal Kevin Farrell on the Vatican's TV channel in a video statement, which was caused by a cerebral stroke which led to a coma and irreversible cardiac arrest. It says that the Pope's death began a papal interregnum in a 9-day period of mourning known as a novendiales, land for 9 days. His funeral took place on April 26, 2025. Cardinal electors arrived in Rome to attend a congregation of cardinals and decided that May 7th, 2025 shall be the start of the conclave set to elect Francis' successor. On May 8th, Robert Francis Prevost, who was made cardinal by Francis in 2023, was elected as Pope Leo XIV. It says here that Francis' spiritual statement dated June 29th, 2022, repeated his wish to be buried at the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore in Rome. Upon his death, he was laid to rest there in accordance with his testament, becoming the first pope to be interred in the Santa Maria Maggiore since Clement IX in 1669. His testament ended, and I quote, "May the Lord grant a fitting reward to all those who have loved me and who continue to pray for me. The suffering that has marked the final part of my life, I offer to the Lord for peace and in the world and for fraternity amongst people." Though now his legacy, Francis' papacy coincided with a period of widespread change and reckoning within the global Catholic order and within society at large. Throughout his papacy, he was noted for his support for the plight of refugees, migrants, and the impoverished. Since their beginnings, he had been outspoken in his criticism of the wars in Ukraine, Sudan, Gaza, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Myanmar, and notwithstanding numerous other conflicts and acts of suppression against the civilian population globally. He appointed more than 80% of the cardinals that elected his successor, notably reducing the European share of College of Cardinals from a majority to a plurality. He was celebrated for his outreach to China and the African continent. His tolerance towards differing faith communities and his younger attention to younger Catholic adherents and the changing nature of the faith. Additionally, he formalized the Church's policy of opposition and death to the death penalty in all cases. It says here that under his papacy, women remained banned from becoming priests, joining the diaconate or being appointed to the College of Bishops or Cardinals. However, Francis made significant strides towards increasing women's presence in the senior and central administration of the Church. He was the first to grant them voting rights with the Synod of Bishops and increased their presence in functions and institutions of the Church that had previously been restricted or dominated by men. He was nonetheless been criticized by some by having only produced reform within existing frameworks or gender division of the Catholic Church. You know, it's probably true. I would say that the Catholic Church is very misogynistic. It was only governed by men. And this is something that I totally respect of Pope Francis, that included women. And it says here that doing little advanced, serious, and radical reform of the institutions to ensure an ideal of inclusion and parity. He set himself apart from other popes in upholding the Church's departure from the Tridentine Mass, which had only been loosely enforced by both predecessors whose reign occurred after the institution of the reforms of the Second Vatican Council. Though it was not banned outright during his tenure, he nonetheless greatly increased Vatican oversight over the facilitation of the ritual and restricted the right of the new priest to engage in the practice. Some have stated that his view as having the, quote, Tridentine liturgy had become a symbol of the rejection of the Vatican II itself as well as the Pope's teachings. It says here that in 2022, he issued the first apology by the Vatican for its role in a cultural erasure and forced assimilation of First Nations of people in Canada from the late 19th to mid-20th centuries. His endorsement of the conditional blessing of same-sex couples earned him praise from many progressive outlets within and outside the Church. Some groups, though, have been critical of the extent of his tolerance on various LGBTQ issues. Why? Because they don't accept the fact that Pope Francis was not a homophobe like all other religious people. It says here that particularly the question of the acceptance of the transgender identity and its answer to a larger issue of homosexuality, queer identity, and sin. That's another thing I fucking hate. Sin. As I said before, I am not a believer. I believe that sin is a toxic belief by religious people saying, oh, if you don't do this, God's going to punish you. Or if you don't obey this, you're going to go burn in the lake of fire. And they always use Sodom and Gomorrah as an example. Give me a break. That's something I don't accept, and I hate that. It also says here that the progressive stances he held drew significant criticism from conservative elements within the college. Doesn't surprise me, you know. But conservative people, look, I'm not saying all of them are like that. There are some conservative people who are decent human beings. But sadly, in this era, the majority of conservatives are nothing more than just bigots in regards to transgenders, the LGBTQ community. And Pope Francis was a decent guy. He was not a racist. He was not a bigot in that aspect. But for religious Christian nuts especially, they were against that. And yet somehow they were against that, but yet they're always saying, no, God protect Trump. And they're always praying, touching this guy like he is some sort of God. Give me a break, you know. And I don't know. I will never understand like how people view or they just want to exclude people just because of their gender identity or what they fall or the person they fall in love with, all because of what some magical book says, you know. That is why I have like a strong dislike towards religion. And Pope Francis, though, was very progressive. And that's something that I will always respect. Yeah, sorry if I keep repeating the same thing, but I have nothing against the guy. You know, he was more of a decent human being than Pope John Paul II, you know. I have my opinions on that guy. But with Pope Francis, he was a great guy. Sadly, though, he passed away. And all I can say is, may he rest in peace. And let's see what happens with this new so-called Pope, which is like, I don't have any respect for that guy, you know. But whatever. So in conclusion, that about wraps up for this week's podcast. But before I go, I would like to say this. Are you feeling tired all the time? Are you tired of energy drinks that leave you crashing? W Energy is the clean, jitter-free solution designed for gamers, creators, and go-getters. No sugar, no artificial dyes, just pure focus and lasting energy. Exclusive deal for our listeners. If you want to get a 10% discount on checkout, use the promo code TalkWithAntonio for 10% off on eligible products. The link is in my bio, by the way. And also, if you want to look me up, you can find me on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, also on YouTube. You can find me there. You can if you like my videos, click the channel to subscribe and like my videos. And I will see you all later. Have a great evening, guys.